So, hey everybody, this is Andrew Hunzicker, CPA with DOPE CFO. We're going to have a great conversation today. Carlos Vela, welcome to the show. Before you jump in, we're going to just talk this at a high level. We've all seen this. We have just record-breaking sales and a very hot market for cannabis CBD. We have a new administration. Things are going to pick up very, very rapidly. That said, for minority communities, both cannabis CBD business owners and consumers, the opportunities are more limited. It's a very, very capital intensive industry. And so that has been an area of concern as states open up legalization. Up until the first state started to legalize, a history of disproportionate criminal charges, and even evil drug stigma was unfairly directed at minority communities. And even today, with more than 30 states legalized or decriminalized weed, this unfairness has followed minorities. So either minorities working in cannabis or allies, people that want to support minorities working in cannabis, get this issue and have taken steps to establish social equity from day one. And many new states are coming on. I've actually talked to some of them. They're very concerned about making sure they look at this issue as they legalize in their state. So we're going to talk to Carlos Vela today, cannabis accountant, who has experience actually helping cannabis owners apply for social equity licenses. He's going to talk about several things. And so why don't we just dive right in? It looks like you have an amazing career at a Big Four and publicly traded companies, which I think is going to be huge experience as we go towards legalization. We're going to have much more SEC public filing type of work as well. So why don't you just jump into your background out of you kind of started like me auditing in Big Four.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. So, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in San Francisco, what I like to call the birthplace of legal cannabis. I've been an advocate and proponent of cannabis since a young age. After graduating college, I started my career as an auditor and spent 5 years at KPMG in the SF office. After leaving KPMG, I went to work for various companies across multiple industries, from a large multinational Fortune 500 to a publicly traded data security firm, and finally a late stage technology startup. I've held various roles in the respective corporate accounting departments, but the experience I value most was the SEC reporting and running the day-to-day accounting operations. In October 2018, I left my job to start my own practice. While I was in college, I majored in accounting and entrepreneurship. So being an entrepreneur and owning my own business was something I've always wanted to do. And in doing research on cannabis accounting and having friends in the space, I realized there was so much opportunity for a CPA in cannabis that I found DOPE CFO online. I then founded my practice, Mindful CPAs, and that was the beginning of my journey into cannabis.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, you're kind of in the birthplace around the San Francisco and California area. And I think that's going to continue to be a huge leader, whether it's, hedge funds or investors coming in or just new companies as well. So you've got like a huge background. And what's also amazing, and as future business owners listen to this podcast or whatever, or people that already have a cannabis company, to find someone like Carlos who's got this experience, because people like you are the people this industry is lacking in a big way. I mean, so most people serving the niche do not have big public SEC backgrounds or Big Four audit backgrounds as well. So you're going to bring a ton of value to clients as well. So why don't we dive in from kind of company experience to kind of what are some of the unique skills or traits that you bring to your specific practice, and how does your current practice or company want to kind of serve in this niche?
Yeah, so I like to think of my breadth of experience, like kind of that I just mentioned, as what wide ranging, and it's definitely given me the confidence to build my cannabis practice. So at Mindful CPAs, we offer a full service from bookkeeping to financial reporting and income tax preparation. So the years I spent as an auditor, or whether it was drafting 10Qs and 10Ks, and finally running my own day-to-day accounting department from month-end close,
Yeah.
the quarter close, an annual close, dealing with the auditors. That all that has given me all the experience needed to be successful in this cannabis niche.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there you definitely have the full set of skills and whatnot. So that's going to be awesome as well. Let's just kind of jump in. So around the skills and background into you had mentioned that your first client was an equity applicant in California. What is it about social equity in the cannabis industry that's most important to you? How do you plan to continue the focus? And I've talked about this in articles and with other people in Oregon and elsewhere. And one issue that I always come back to it, there are just so many issues around this topic of social equity, and it's challenging because on the one hand, we really need to address this issue, but on the other hand, this industry takes massive capital, and so and not just it's intellectual capital, tools and skills, and then also just money to succeed. So it's kind of a complex problem to solve.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and obviously that's been a huge barrier of entry is the capital, just money. Like when I was a kid, or when I was in high school and college, when the first cannabis clubs started opening up, like it seemed to be more smaller players who were in the game. It was small stores where you can go get a cannabis card or have a friend who had one, and you have access to the medical grade cannabis. But now with legalization, I feel like it's mostly big money, folks with big money and big companies who've swooped in and got access to the licenses, and they've left little for the rest of us, or the smaller players and a lot of minorities who want to be business owners. So I think with the social equity programs being rolled out, I'm in a position to help these applicants and business owners stay compliant with the federal and state laws, and just to help them stay in business. A lot of them
Yeah.
were they're not aware. They didn't have the financial literacy, or they just weren't aware of kind of like the pitfalls of starting a business in cannabis. They just thought, let's try to get a license and let's just operate our business. But then without the proper infrastructure, the finance and accounting infrastructure, they're almost like doomed to fail.
And so with this, how is it going with this very first client? Has it been, are they having success? Are they getting the help they need? And I mean, having you on their team is huge. And that's actually part of the piece of the puzzle. So from every step, so a minority may not have access to a world-class accountant out of Big Four, and you helping these people is just humongous. Just as a side note, but how is it going with them right now?
So it's been a little bit of a challenge, like as I anticipated. It was pretty messy. We're doing a lot of cleanup work right now. So I'm picking up where their old CPAs and bookkeepers left off, and I could see the difference in what the DOPE CFO program offers and trains versus just any other bookkeeper or CPA.
Yeah,
They basically the bookkeepers and CPA were just taking whatever information that the client gave them, and really they weren't too concerned with the quality of the
yeah.
information, and they were preparing tax returns and whatnot. And then as I come in and I review, I'm finding all these errors. And so that's kind of so we're battling somewhat of an uphill climb right now, but it's exciting. Like you said, it was my first client, and so I'm taking it as like a crash course in cannabis, and applying all my skills into this client so that we get her cleaned up. And our go live date is April 1st,
Oh,
coming up soon. So yeah, we're just full speed ahead trying to get her caught up and get her in great position for success.
well, that's awesome. And why don't we even take a step back, even talking pre-legalization? What were some of the issues related that impacted and still today impact some of these minority communities?
I mean, yeah, I think it's well documented, and you mentioned it earlier about how just the arrests, cannabis related arrests, were always disproportionate when it came to minorities. People would get in trouble simply for driving around with a roach, or the end
Yeah,
of a joint in their car. And I saw a stat online. It was pretty interesting, showing that despite similar usage rates between whites and non-whites, blacks and people of color were 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession here in the U.S. So there's
That,
tons of work left to be done. We're happy that states and hopefully the federal government is going to work towards decriminalizing and expunging the records of people with cannabis-related charges. So I think the future is bright. I think the states are getting it right as a lot more of them come on board. So we're just hoping now that the federal government kind of follows step and works on
yeah,
descheduling or legalizing or whatever they want to do.
I'm very, very hopeful as well, and I hope they're going to get it right. And even the background of the non-cannabis world, that we saw riots around the U.S. and whatnot, and protests about this whole social equity issue, and people are kind of fed up with it, and we want change. I think most people do, so that's going to be super exciting as well. Um, Even though this industry is exploding, it's still, I think, again, we see disproportionate white CEOs leading a bunch of the companies. There was a USC study that even found that California licensed shops tend to be located in predominantly white neighborhoods, leading to regulators policing the industry more in diverse neighborhoods where unlicensed stores are more common. So how do you feel about the current surge toward legalization is affecting both the minority entrepreneurs and cannabis consumers kind of right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And in my opinion, through legalization and social equity programs, more minority entrepreneurs are going to get opportunities. Whether to opportunities to pursue their dreams and become business owners. Like as we're talking about social equity programs, these cities and these states are finally allotting resources to these communities to help level the playing field, so to speak. So hopefully, and as the industry continues to grow and generates tax revenues for states and municipalities, we'll see some of that revenue fund programs for child development or financial literacy for middle school and high school students, so that they're better prepared for success. I think we can't just talk about we have to start from the roots, right?
Yes.
If these young kids don't get those resources to help them be, I guess, more knowledgeable, then it's kind of going to continue setting them up for failure. And as for cannabis consumers, I think legalization has allowed for more transparency. We all have tons of options, from the wide range of flower to the
Yeah.
edibles and even CBD products. Like, I personally like being able to know what I'm consuming, as opposed to just buying whatever I could get at the time, from whoever it was.
On the street, and hopefully as they come in, and California can often be a leader, as you see, like you said, some of these big, huge companies are trying to, some chain out of Canada that's going to have 1,000 dispensaries or whatever. And I think of, like, I don't know, Walgreens or whatever. We still want to have the small shop that's owned by one person, and hopefully they can set rules like, okay, we're going to give X number of licenses to the smaller owner, and same for the small farmer. There, and I was reading an article today about some of the in the alcohol industry. We've got these huge, like Budweiser and Coors, and huge wineries, but we still have very, very small craft beer makers or whatever. And hopefully we can have that in cannabis as well. And so, leading into that, so that's kind of what maybe some of the states can do. We've talked about that, and even the federal level. And what do you personally do at your level to help kind of focus on this niche and helps establish social equity in cannabis?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, for me, like, I like to provide, just whether it's a social equity client of mine or a non-social equity client of mine, I try to just provide the quality service, personalized service to these business owners who choose and want to work with me. I think that's kind of leveling the playing field, right? It's not like,
Yes.
I shouldn't hold one hand more than the other. It's like, these
Yeah.
are both legitimate businesses and they deserve quality service. So each and every client of mine gets treated the same. I spend the time with them to meet with them, understand their business, and just get to know them before we talk about money and pricing. So, because for me, building trust with a potential client will ultimately be the foundation of a long and successful partnership. You know, as they grow, I grow, just like we preach in the DOPE CFO program. So I'm a true believer in that. So I set them up with a world-class finance and accounting system, so that they're able to make sound business decisions and compete in this extremely competitive market. And that is ultimately what is going to get them to refer me to others within the industry.
And you hit a bunch of good points about that. Is awesome about that personal, really high quality level of service that you're providing. And I think especially coming out of Big Four, and I talk to that, it's like a lot of people and companies are used to dealing with those bigger companies. And if you have a question or an email and you shoot it off to KPMG or whatever, you may not hear back for 2 weeks or whatever. But being able to give that higher level of service is going to be very, very important. And so, yeah, I would recommend if you're a cannabis business owner, you'd be very smart to give Carlos a call. And by the way, at the end we'll give you a chance to put where to find you on your and we'll put it in the show notes as well here.
Thank you.
Now, but flipping that to some of us who, like a DOPE CFO, are allies of minority communities, what can we do to help advocate social equity as well?
Yeah, I mean, so I think kind of what I was just saying earlier, I try to get to know my clients and understand their business and their background. You know, I like to know what's driving them, because, you know, somebody who's coming with deep pockets and just trying to make money is, you know, they may have different drivers than somebody who comes from a minority community who is in it to, like, oh, I want to lift my entire family or my community out of, you know, or, you know, help us get out of poverty, let's say, you know.
Yeah.
So I like to make sure that our values are aligned, and so that helps ultimately build trust between both parties. And so once your client knows you have honest intentions and you're working with them to help grow their business and their brand, and honestly, and what I found is it makes getting the information I need to do my job that much easier, because they know that, okay, this guy's really trying to help. He's not just asking for my information, give it to me, and then I'm going to receive an invoice. It's like, no, look, we're aligned here. Like, you know exactly what I need this information for. So they're more willing to provide it and walk me through it. And there's some tough conversations that we need to have, like, oh, like they owe debt here, or they haven't paid excise tax here, and they might be embarrassed to admit that. But if you know, as a CPA or a service provider, if we're on the same page and we trust each other, then that information is easier to get.
Yeah, and you can provide that help, and so they look at you as trusted advisor as opposed to just someone who's sending them a bunch of invoices to get paid or whatnot. And we really can, people like you with your background can provide a ton of help, and it even goes outside of maybe accounting and tax into operations or software issues or whatever things they may not be good at. You may have a ton more software experience than they do, and so we can really help these people. So it's awesome to hear you're doing that. And let's transition into kind of how did you find DOPE CFO, and has that helped you as you gotten into the industry as well?
Yeah, I tell everybody that I can that, you know, DOPE CFO has been great for me. And so, you know, like I mentioned in the beginning, like as I was researching cannabis accounting online, I came across the website and I started looking through, and I was like, wow, I was like, man, this guy's on something, you know. So I listened to several playbacks of CPE webinars. I was working on my CPE, so I was doing the bunch with the DOPE CFO CPEs, and I listened to a bunch of the podcast episodes, kind of hopefully like this one will be. And I realized, I was like, wow, like this is awesome, and this is for me, like this is what I was meant to do. And it's funny to say that, but it's true. And so, yeah, and then as the DOPE CFO program, the work papers, the process flows, has been a huge confidence builder in getting started. You know, and most importantly, the VIP coaching network has been the most valuable. Like being able to see questions being asked and answered has just been an amazing resource. There's so much knowledge and expertise to soak up from all the members in this group. And it's funny, like sometimes my clients will ask me questions, and the reason I know the answer is because of the VIP coaching network. I remember reading about it and reading all the questions and comments. And so I'm like, all right, so now I'm able to kind of provide that value to my clients. So if any CPA or just accountant out there looking to get into cannabis, I definitely would recommend Dope CFO. It's been a tremendous help.
Well, that's awesome, and thank you very much. And if you are an accountant or bookkeeper or CPA or enrolled agent, yeah, come to dopecfo.com. You can check out our programs tab or read testimonials, our blog. We have a lot of information on our site. Yeah, it's been a total ball, and our programs really evolved with all those tools and work papers, or the education. But like you say, that the community, I think, is second to none at this point, and I learn as well. It's just hugely beneficial to share that knowledge daily, and we're all super psyched on this industry. And whether we're talking about accounting or court cases or tax, or maybe it's a software system or HR, insurance, or just could be any topic under the sun. And in our group, someone's going to know the answer. I mean, we'll have just like, oh, where can I find a cannabis bank in Detroit, or I've got I saw a sales tax issue in, I think it was San Francisco County, and people were so broad and deep that people have those answers. And so that's been super fun to find out. And with that, let's kind of go into wrapping up. And this would be a good place to, what advice would you give to people in minority communities, either wanting to get in on the accounting side or just the cannabis industry in any way, or CBD hemp as well, and or for allies who just want to help?
Yeah, no, for any minority, but future business owner, my biggest piece of advice is to just go for it. A lot of times it's easy to sit back and say, why us? Or, this isn't fair. But if we want to enact real change in our communities, we need to start building businesses that uplift our communities and provide resources to our communities. I think the opportunity is right now. If you don't act, you're going to see it go by. There's always people who have money who are trying to get these licenses. So act now. Don't continue to wait for the government or municipalities. We've been waiting forever. There are tons of resources on Instagram or other social media where you can find like-minded folks. Like, join industry groups. I got my first client by joining a Latinos in Cannabis online networking mixer, just randomly. And we both happened to be on there. And after the meeting, I followed up with her and said, hey, I could really help. There was literally only like 15 people in that mixer, and she and I happened to be 2 people. And so I followed up with her afterwards, and here we are. We're starting this journey together, and hopefully it'll be a long lasting and fruitful journey for both of us.
And that's awesome. And we talk about that too, just getting involved, whether you're on the accounting side or just want to grow pot or whatever, get involved in the industry. It's so easy, and you'll start meeting those people. So that's awesome. Tell people, as we wrap up real quickly, where can they find you? I know a lot of business owners are going to want to be able to reach you, and we'll put a link in as well, but go ahead and say where your website and best way to reach you.
Yeah, so I'm located in San Francisco Bay Area, but I serve clients throughout the states. So you can find me at www.mindfulcpas.com, mindfulcpas.com, or you can send me an email at info@mindfulcpas.com.
That's awesome. I love the name, and that's super easy to remember. And yeah, mindful is a good word for the people, and people will remember that easily. So that is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And we will put this out, and we'll put links in as well.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. All right. So Carlos, why don't you tell us, you were in the DOPE CFO program. How did you use that to get your first client?
Yeah, so using the DOPE CFO program and the guidance that you provide, Andrew, on how to get involved and get involved in the industry and meeting new people. So I was on Instagram, just looking on Instagram, and I found a page that was a Latinos in Cannabis networking mixer online. It was just on Zoom. And so I joined, and it was about 15 people or so. And so we all went around, we introduced ourselves. And so I noticed that one was a CEO of a cannabis company in Oakland, California. And so after the meeting, I reached out to her via email and I just said, hey, I would like to connect. I think I could really help you. And, she responded immediately. And so we started talking. And then once I signed her as a client, like I mentioned on the call, or we as I mentioned, so I like to get to know my clients. So we actually met up. I'm in San Francisco. She's in Oakland. We met up, and she just randomly asked me. She's like, I have to go up north to a distributor to pick up some product. She's like, do you want to come with me? I was like, you know what? Sure. Like, this is an opportunity to just to get to know her and to meet her. So we drove up to Northern California together, about 2 hours away. And she introduced me to one of her biggest vendors, who was a farmer in Mendocino County. And I also had another call with another farmer from Mendocino. And so it's crazy how it works. It's like I got my one client through Instagram in this networking mixer. And a couple of weeks later, I'm driving up with her, meeting farmers in Northern California who are now going to be my clients. And they now, they have been impressed and like what I'm doing and offering. So they're recommending me to their within their farmer community. So I'm just kind of like, it's been a whirlwind. I went from like not knowing where my first client was going to come from to getting one, and now it's exploding into potentially others. So I'm just really excited, and the DOPE CFO program has been great in that respect.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And that's just the perfect example of we call it the VIP. We want our people to grow that VIP, valuable expert instructor participant. And I often talk about P is very, very easy to do. And people for some reason are lazy and don't want to do it, but you just participate. It could be the most smallest little thing, like a little tiny mixer, and that leads to a client. And sure enough, that leads to a couple more. And then all of a sudden you're off to the races. At the end of the day, you got to back it up with world-class service, but you're doing that. And so that is just awesome to hear. And thank you so much for letting us know on that.